Hello, my name is Greta Harrison. Welcome to Born Fabulous Podcast, Season 3, Episode 4. The theme of this season is young adults with intellectual disabilities living full lives of independence and interdependence. You will hear interviews with parents, support staff, and of course, the young adults with intellectual disabilities. Please note that these interviews were done 1 to 2 years ago. Achieving independence is a complex journey for many individuals and families. There were many stops and starts with various entities when putting together Season 3. Regardless, this content is very relevant and we hope you will find it helpful. This episode is the first of 2 episodes with Patti McKeon. Patti is retired and is best known as Kayla's mother. Kayla McKeon made history as the first professional lobbyist with Down syndrome. Please enjoy this short clip of Love is a Potion. The lyrics are by Melissa Riggio, a young lady who had Down syndrome and was the focus of episodes 1 through 4 in Season 1. The music and voice are by Rachel Fuller. Hello, Patti McKeon. Thanks so much.
Greta.
Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm better known as Kayla's mom, really. But I'm retired at this point. I worked for 14, 15 years for U.S. Air. And when 9/11 came along, we lost our jobs. So I had to reinvent myself and work in an office. I went to the New York State Thruway Authority and worked my way up to running the administration office. Then I retired probably about 4 years ago now, shortly before Kayla moved to Washington. So that worked out well. So now I seem to be moving her back and forward and back again. I seem to move her a lot. So I don't know if that's what I do in my retirement.
Our jobs as parents is never done, is it?
Never.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned Kayla moving to Washington and moving back and forth, because if anybody doesn't know Kayla McKeon, we talked to her at length in Season 2 of Born Fabulous Podcast with her best friend, Rachel. Mm-hmm. And Kayla is a very well-known self-advocate who is the first lobbyist who has Down syndrome. She works in Washington, D.C. with NDSS, but she travels quite a bit. She can work remotely. She gives speeches. She's a really well-known public speaker, and that's how I met her years ago when she was giving a speech. So
thank you.
That's your amazing daughter.
Thank you.
So, so as far as Kayla, she is fairly independent right now. She's always been a pretty independent, spunky soul.
She is.
But now she's living on her own, mm-hmm. and which we're going to talk about. And I wanted to ask you, what helped prep her when she was younger, in middle school, high school? We've got younger families listening and maybe professionals. Any tidbits, big or small, that you could share?
I think, well, we definitely impressed upon her reading was important. When she was from 2 on, she kept saying she wanted to get her driver's license. So we said, well, in order to do that, you have to take tests and you have to read. So she was on a reading. She read by the time she was 4 years old. She surprised us one birthday because we thought she was repeating all the time because we read so many of the same books. And on her 4th birthday, she got a new book and she sat down and started reading it. We were like, she's reading. We didn't know that she was reading. But so she read early, which I think is really important if you could, if you can foster that. She is stubborn. So that has helped get her where she is. When she was young in school, she used to run and go hide on the stage because she always liked the stage. And that led to getting her an assistant at school, which worked out for us. But so from second grade on, she had somebody in school with her. At the time, the school wasn't really inclusive. So it wasn't like you had one person for the whole class or whatever. That person worked with her and she did help the class, but she was a one-on-one with Kayla. And that helped a lot. Probably kept her in step, in school. And she had that throughout high school. When she was in junior high, she had the best woman ever. She remains friends with her today, but she helped Kayla a lot with her independence in school. She did things that, maybe I would have been afraid to get her involved in a club. And, I was always afraid she would fail at that or something. And so she did those things. When it came time in high school, her assistant didn't travel with her to the high school. She got another assistant who wanted to hold her hands in the hallways. And Kayla was like, nah, I can get my way around, not going backwards here. So she had to kind of teach that assistant a little bit, how things worked. But like I said, being stubborn and, working on things until, we spent hours on homework sometimes, but she didn't get up. She didn't walk away from that. She if she struggled, we worked it out. And, she stayed on task. And I'm telling you, there were some days that we were here from till 10 o'clock at night doing homework because she was in a regular classroom. So she had to keep up with that work because they didn't really modify at that time. So that's it. She's, like I said, and she's still like that. She's bound and determined right now. No matter what, she'll get that degree. And she's been like that for 10 years because she takes a class a semester, mostly class a semester. But
because she's like, working. Because I want to remind the audience she's working. So she's just taking like one class at a time at the local community college.
Right. And, and so in traveling sometimes when she's working and, so, that part's been difficult, but she's like, I'm getting that darn diploma. So, she's a toughie. She really works at what she does.
You touched on a lot in that, and I want to emphasize, Kayla, was when you say they weren't really inclusive, you meant that the proper support for inclusion wasn't really there, but she was included in her general education classes. She did take her general education classes. Yes. I understand, as do many parents who are probably listening, the amount of work that entails, because I still remember all those days of the long studying, and I've done it, and many others have too. There's no way around it. You have to do the work. You have to do the work. And she did. So I want everybody to know Kayla is still an excellent student, and she works very, very hard. And so I like what you're saying, because you're really bringing up the point that all that hard work is more than just hard work in school. It's prepared her for hard work and independence in life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love
there's still times that she might say something to me, be upset that something happened. And I would say to her, I was a boss. If I was the boss, Kayla, I would be telling you that you have to do this, and this is what you have to do. So, every once in a while you got to rein her in, but, overall, she does well on her own. And I see that more since she moved out, because, when I was here, she might ask me for help on something, but now she's doing it on her own. So, that's been a good thing too.
And, that's another great point. I've done that. I'm sure other parents do it, but to those who are younger behind us, often telling my daughter, you can't do X, Y, or Z, or you would get fired.
Right.
Or so-and-so, it's oftentimes somebody else's example. So-and-so did X, Y, and Z, and they did get fired. They
Right.
have to realize that there's really real world
Right.
consequences
There's repercussions for what you do. It's
that don't happen at home. Yeah, but
right.
would
Right.
happen in a job. So yeah,
Right.
that's a great point. Now, did Kayla do any chores or anything like that at home?
Yes. She did dusting and vacuuming the house. So even when she was getting her SSI money, we paid her with her own money. So she would do her chores and, kept her, because before that, before we paid her, she would lag a little more at it. So we said, well, this is her money, but we're giving it to her that way. So I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but that's how we got her to do her chores, and that's helped again with her living on her own.
And so what about things like laundry and stuff like that? Did she do any of that?
She did start doing it more probably during COVID, when we were home. Now she comes in and brings her laundry here, but she does it, or she'll actually do ours if there's ours is there also. First couple of weeks she would leave it, and I get up earlier in the morning and I would do it and everything. And I thought, well, this isn't working real well, so we would wait for her to get here to do it. But no, she does her laundry.
And does she like cooking?
She loves cooking. She loves cooking, and she's doing it with her roommate Alyssa, who is also a mentor. I think we'll touch on that more. But Alyssa and Kayla are good friends as well as a mentor, and they cook together probably 3 times a week between things that they're doing out and everything. But they cook together, and she sends me pictures of all her meals. They're doing a good job at it. Kayla started cooking here with me, but she was probably doing more now than she was there, because sometimes it's easier to do it yourself. It's hard to let that go.
Good. Well, since we're talking about cooking and laundry and all the chores of daily living, let's talk about her living situation now. How did you cope with the pandemic when it started? Are you guys vaccinated and boosted? How did we get to where Kayla is today? Let's touch on that.
Okay. When Kayla moved back from Washington, it took her a while to want to move out again, and Alyssa and Kayla talked about moving in together. Before the pandemic, they started looking at places. They hadn't found anything yet. But that came to a halt during the pandemic. I said, you're right. I didn't want her living somewhere else when we couldn't control, what was happening as far as the pandemic. I wanted to make sure she was safe. And so after the pandemic, she and Alyssa started looking at places again, and they got on a list for a place they liked, and they got called in November. So in November, they moved in, and it's worked out beautifully. They love it. They have a good time together. They do things together, and then they do things separately. It's probably about, and I guess 3 to 5 miles from our house. So we said, in case of an emergency, we can be there in less than 10 minutes. We have friends along the way that could get there earlier if they had to, but we haven't had anything come up like that. Kayla was always afraid at the beginning. When she was back home, she was always afraid to stay alone. Never wanted to stay alone. During the day she did, but she didn't want to stay alone at night. And now if Alyssa has to go somewhere, she goes on vacation or goes to her parents' house overnight, Kayla's like, no, I'm staying there. She's stayed alone a number of times. Back last week, she said, I think I'm overstaying my welcome here. I got to go. So she's grown in a lot of ways already.
So you touched on, she was looking to move out before the pandemic hit. And then those first few months when there was so much uncertainty, none of us knew it would drag on as long as it has. We're recording
Absolutely.
this in 2022 when we still have the pandemic, but it's not the same as it was at the beginning. So you're saying those first several months, like many families who have kids with disabilities I watched, they all kind of hunkered down and got together.
Yeah.
So that's what you did. And then when things loosened up a bit, she started looking again. And tell us what the parameters were when you were looking for places.
We wanted someplace that was safe. We wanted someplace that was a short distance from us so that we could get to her, and some things that had amenities around her that she could get to if she wanted to take a walk.
And you wanted something that specifically everybody had their own bathroom and their own bedroom.
2 bathroom, 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
Got a balcony. They've got some nice things there.
Okay. And when you were looking, how long did it take you to find the kind of place that you liked?
Well, again, we started looking before the pandemic, so we probably looked maybe, on and off for a month. And then when the pandemic kind of let up, my girlfriend lived in the complex, so they weren't really showing it because of the pandemic. So she let us into her apartment to see it, and they were able to see it with furniture, which makes a difference than when you're looking at an empty apartment, and see, what they liked about it. And they liked it immediately. So they got on the list because it was a waiting list. And that probably took them, a good, maybe 6 months or more till one opened up.
Also, you had mentioned on the driving that her roommate, Alyssa, helps out with that. Just so everybody knows, Kayla does have her license. She's very proud to have her license, but she doesn't have a car and she really doesn't drive very much. So would that be fair to say?
It is fair to say. Probably our fault more because we use our cars, and she was going back and forth and traveling so much she didn't really have a chance to drive. So yeah, she has it. She's thrilled with it. I hope at some point she can get a little car to go back and forth. But at this point, she's not there yet. But she does drive, and she can drive.
And so everybody knows, she was in Washington, D.C. for a while. And with all that traveling, like Patti just said, that's not a place anybody wants to drive. So,
yes, there was no way she was driving
there. So that kind of put a kibosh on that.
Right.
And are you all vaccinated and boosted?
All of us, all 3 of us. Yes.
Okay. And can you share with us talk about services in New York State? Because I'm not sure if listeners realize that every state is different. And I believe it's 41 states that have waiting lists for people who have disabilities and 9 that don't. And I think New York is one of those ones that does not, along with California and some others. So if you could just let us know what things are like in New York.
Sure. I feel very fortunate that we have the services that we do. Kayla got out of school when she was 18. She did a BOCES program for business that we set it up so she could go through it twice. So she did have to stay the extra year in school to get that program. But after that, there weren't services at that time other than group homes or group things that, and there's still some things out there that, people go to the mall and sit at the mall all day. And we didn't want that for Kayla, obviously. They had a program. It was up at the community college that she goes to now, but it was somewhere where they pick her up and they took her for the day. I can't say that she got a lot of things out of that, but it was kind of a placeholder for us until we could get something. So she went up there and she learned to navigate the internet mostly. But shortly after that, they had an agency start here, and it started as just families. So there were the first 6 people got into it, and that's when they started developing the circle of determinations. And Kayla was probably maybe in the first 10 people because we wanted her out of there as soon as possible. But this circle in New York State, you set it up where you do what you want. So we had a broker and a service coordinator come to the house and with a whiteboard and, wrote down what Kayla wanted to do with her life pretty much at that point. And one of them was speaking publicly. She liked to do that. She wanted to go to school. She wanted to go out and volunteer in the community, things like that. So this program allowed her a pot of money. And through this agency that's now called Advocates, we would actually hire the person to go out with Kayla. And it's a one-on-one, which many agencies are not here. But she has a one-on-one that goes out with her 5 days a week is how we set it up. They go out into the community or wherever Kayla sets up where she wants to go. But we set up for her to go to school. And originally she was auditing a class and she found out that she was doing well and she really liked it. She said, well, this is crazy. I might as well do it for credit. So we went and spoke to the disability office at the school and set that all up. She had to take many classes to get back up to college level because it had been so long since she had been in school. Even though she had passed the New York State Regents for math, now she was under level for math. So she had to take some extra courses in addition to the standard college courses. So she set that up to start school. And she also was doing some volunteer work. She started speaking in schools, grammar schools. We had some friends that were teachers and they got her into the schools to start speaking. And so she really liked that. So that's kind of what started her on all of that. Like I said, she did volunteer in the community. At some point, she was working at the library as a volunteer.
Wasn't she working at the beauty salon too?
She did. She worked at the beauty salon from when that's where I used to get my hair done. And she would come with me, and at 13, I think, she asked the owner, can I work here? And she said, yeah. So she started there and she actually worked at the beauty salon for until she moved to Washington, 16 years or something. And that's where she got to know her friend, Rachel. But, she worked there once a week, because she was doing the other things during the week. She would work there on Saturdays and they were very good to her and she really liked it there. But when she left and then she got her job at NDSS, she didn't go back for her, 1 day a week there, but they were very good to her there.
And she also, for the audience, I want them to know she also worked with a congressman, correct?
Yep. When she started speaking, she had cards made and said she was a motivational speaker. And we ran into he wasn't a congressman at the time, he was running, John Katko. And we were at a baseball game and he was trying to get her a shirt that he was throwing out. And, of course she couldn't catch. So he came up and handed her the shirt and they talked for a little while. But then probably a couple months later, he was still running. He ended up coming to one of our church festivals. And she said to him, do you remember me? And he said, yes. And so she gave him her business card. He gave her his business card. And so she gave him hers. And he said, motivational speaker. He said, geez, if I win, I want you to come work for me. And so she said, okay. So he won and he called her called her election day and reminded us to vote. And then he called her on inauguration and said, I'll be wearing, a blue and orange tie, look for me. And so they were texting back and forth. Yes, I see you, and she went to work for him in his office as an intern. And she worked there for a couple of years. And from there, he asked her to go to Washington for an employment meeting. And I attended with her. And we went to Washington, and it wasn't known to us that it was with National Down Syndrome Society because we did know them from going to galas. And Kayla was doing some self-advocacy stuff for them. So we went there and she spoke with John Katko, who was then the congressman. And it came to Sarah Weir that She was the president of the NDSS at the time. And I believe it was Kathy McMorris Rogers said to her, you should hire her, And so she asked us at the end of the meeting and she asked me, and she said, Kayla, come and move to Washington and, be a lobbyist for us. And I was like, you're asking the wrong person. You have to ask Kayla. So she asked Kayla, and, we were both kind of floored at the time, So I said, we'll talk about it later, and we wrote our pros and our cons and all of that. And she decided to go to work for him and to move, which was a really big thing because Kayla had never lived on her own yet. So that made a difference. I think if she would have lived on her own, moving there might have been easier. She wouldn't have been homesick. She wouldn't, she might have known how to navigate things a little better, but she loved the job. And so when she came back here, they said, well, you can work out of there, travel. And that she's been doing that for pretty much 4 years.
And doing it very, very well. I love that story. And I want people to think about all the different things that you've touched on, her going to school, the places she volunteered, the places she worked, and having the support with her. Basically, a lot of it is for transportation.
Right.
Was very, very crucial and very helpful because in the majority of states, we don't have that. So that was really, really impactful for me to think about how broad that support was. I mean, it went so many places with her. So
it's huge.
It's huge. And Kayla is so independent and interdependent. I'm using both those terms now, but she's so skilled at that. It's not that she needs somebody to hold her hand. Like you said in high school, she didn't want somebody to hold her hand. And she doesn't need somebody by her side 24/7. It's really for those things that people who don't have disabilities don't think about.
Right. It was primarily, when we did it, it was primarily for transportation, because at the time I was working, my husband was working, and, I didn't want her sitting home, so that was ideal. And it opened up school to her. It opened up many opportunities for her, and still does today.
Yes. Now tell me, the terms here, if you could describe a little bit more circles. You touched on it, but if you could delve into it a little more what the brokers are, because I remember first hearing that with somebody else and thinking stockbroker. It's not a stockbroker.
But they do manage the money for us.
Okay. But if you could just touch on a little more about the circles and the brokers and what that means.
Okay. For her circle, she has a service coordinator and a broker. The broker does handle the money for us. We opted not to do that on our own. Mark does have to do some paperwork for her, but we chose to have them take care of that, and that's worked out beautifully for her. She has two great people, support staff in that way. Service coordinator always helps us with her services. The woman thinks out of the box. She has thought of things that we wouldn't think of. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but, we'll say, oh, we're having difficulty. Well, why don't you do it this way? Why don't we look into this? And she's terrific. Both of them are terrific. They set up her plan. They set up, all the goals that she has to, the people that are working with her have to meet when she's out, might have been like working in a community or, working on her homework or schoolwork, or, helping her get to school. And, those might be goals that she has. And so Susan, the service coordinator, sets up the goals with Kayla and us. And Angie works on the money part of it. And, she's same thing. If we need something, she says, well, we can move it around here, which, I don't want to know the state. She knows all the rules of the state, some state money, some is other money. I don't have to worry about that. So, and if something happens to us, then there are people in place that can still help her with that.
And this is all person-centered planning. Yes. This is all driven by really Kayla and then her
what Kayla wants to do.
and her immediate support system. And so the mentors, I love your term mentors. Delve into that a little bit.
Well, the people that go out with Kayla, her support staff, are all called mentors. My husband works at the same agency. He's considered Scott's mentor. And, they think of him, like I said, with my husband, he introduces Scott as his friend. He is his friend. Alyssa is Kayla's mentor, roommate, and friend. They are good friends. And the other people, there are some that come and go, and they're mentors, but there are many that have become good friends. And I really like the term also because, I wouldn't want I work for Kayla or I work with Kayla or, it makes it cold. And this is a warm feeling to me that they care about somebody and they're mentoring them.
Is the term mentor one that the agency uses that you work with?
It does.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I really like that.
Yes.
I'm not sure what order these episodes are going to air yet because I record all the interviews first and then I edit and put them in order. But I want to mention that when I spoke to Sandra McElwee, Sean's mom, and I don't know if that's aired yet when you hear this, but she was talking about how where she is in California, I won't say all the agencies because you never want to make a broad brush, but many of the agencies had the approach of hands off, don't get personal, don't whatever. And with the situation that her son has, by having full control over who they hire and every aspect of it, they've taken the opposite road. They've made sure that everybody that Sean has, in his case, they call him Sean Squad. But they're like family. They mm-hmm. want the opposite feeling. They don't want that cold approach. And so it sounds like that's what you've got. The agency you work with does that, right?
Right. Yes. We hire the mentors, but we don't have to fire them. Somebody else will do that for us. But no, it's a much better approach than my support staff or my staff, or it's definitely a warmer feeling.
I like that. And obviously they're very close to Kayla. If many of them have been friends of hers, and yes. One is actually her roommate as a friend. Right. Not a roommate because she has to, but because she wants to.
Right.
So that's great.
Thank you for listening to episode 4 of Born Fabulous Podcast 3rd season. I hope you enjoyed it and want to hear more. Some short video clips from most episodes are available on our YouTube channel and on bornfabulouspodcast.com. In episode 5, Patti will discuss Kayla's independence journey, including how it felt when Kayla moved out, both times. She gives some great advice and leaves us with more than one quote to remember. Please follow and like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be honored if you would leave a review wherever you heard this podcast. Now, please enjoy this clip of Love is a Potion. The lyrics are by Melissa Riggio, who had Down syndrome. The music and voice are by Rachel Fuller.
Love